the big one, which I think everybody's very intrigued about at the moment, Todd B doing God's work again, early deals. Christopher Nkunku on his way to Chelsea. A lot of people think that's very close, or it is close. When do you feel that will happen, and do you think it will happen?
Well, first of all, yes, I think it will happen. The advantage that Chelsea have got in this deal is that they're prepared to pay more than the release clause, which becomes active next summer and is 60 million euros. So Chelsea, by paying more money, gain two advantages. One, they can get the deal wrapped up now and thus jump ahead of any prospective battle in around about a year's time. And two, they can change the payment terms. So if you wait for the release clause and you activate that, then that has to be paid in one lump sum. If you negotiate for higher than the release clause or any kind of other deal, then Chelsea have the opportunity to determine the structure of that deal, which can be more beneficial to them comparative to how the payment terms for the release clause are laid out. So Chelsea did undertake a secret medical somewhere near Frankfurt. The key word is secret, which is why Leipzig are denying it, but there were definitely Chelsea staff there present, and you don't do that medical unless you're moving things along in the right direction. So as I understand it, there is a pre-agreement in place between Nkunku and Chelsea. It is not legally binding, nor is it exclusive at this stage, but as soon as all of the final formalities and negotiations are undertaken between Chelsea and Leipzig, then Nkunku will be able to sign, and at that point the deal will be lined up for a year's time. Now, the Chelsea challenge is that until things become 100% official, it's now out there. And if there are any other rival suitors that wish to take the same approach, there's nothing stopping them. But Chelsea are very confident. There's no problems whatsoever between Nkunku and Chelsea. And they also have a good relationship with Leipzig as well. He obviously scored last night, and he had this loud goal as well, which was a lovely, composed kind of chipped finish. And that was kind of a microcosm of exactly why Chelsea like the player. So this is one, I think, that from Chelsea's point of view, they're still going to try and keep under wraps. And due to the dynamic of the deal, and because they're not, as things currently stand, looking to bring him in January, they will try and keep this one under the radar until, I think, at least the early part of next year. And then we may see an announcement, or they might even try and wait a year until they get to a point where he can actually join. But we've seen this kind of mold with Naby Keita when he joined Liverpool. And if you can get your business done early and put a pre-agreement in place and then turn it into a binding deal, then instead of having a mad scramble in the market, instead of doing what Chelsea did in the last window and having to chase after multiple targets with time running out, they can get a big name in place early. And with Vardy as well, that is what they're working on too. And with Alvarez at Ajax, it's the same kind of thing, that they're not thinking about scrambling anymore as they were towards the end of the window for some kind of midfield option. They're saying, right, that was the tester. Todd Bowley's been interim. Now we've got more time. Let's put a strategy behind it so it isn't chaos, so it isn't a scramble. And I think that is going to reflect over the January window and the summer, that Chelsea are going to get their business done earlier. And now they're developing contacts, and now they're making recruitments. Everything about what they do is still going to be exciting and ambitious, but it's going to be far more structured. And I do fully expect Nkunku to join as things currently stand.
I think what really stands out to me there, Ben, of course, Nkunku, such a talented player. Did a bit of scout watch last night, watched him in the Leipzig game, and scored one brilliant goal that was just offside. Moments later, scores another, so influential. A high goal output, high level of assists over the last few years as well. He's a star, playing that secondary striker role. You know, the Mounts and the Kai Havertz have been struggling there, so it's almost a case of, you know, they're going to go out and keep improving the squad. But the bit, and I know that rivals hate when I use this now, I get called out all the time, but the scary element for me as a United fan is what you said at the end there. No more scrambling. They want structure. They're working on multiple deals for next summer in October. And I know that you know as well as I do that a lot of transfers don't start on the 1st of June. A lot of transfers, the work goes in weeks and months prior. So that isn't out and out new. But I think that this kind of weird thought that Todd Bowley and this group were just going to basically act like yahoos, and it was going to be messy and uncontrolled forever, just because the first summer felt a little bit like that. I just thought people were almost deluding themselves into thinking that this group of individuals who are highly successful at what they do, that are looking to put all the right building blocks in place, were not going to get it right to a degree. And I think that for me, looking in, I look at the way Chelsea are operating and the direction they're moving in. If they get this right, they're going to create they're already a powerful club, but I think they can go to another level. And for the first time, I would say, since Roman took over, I think they could create continuity shrouded with the money and the level of investment they're looking to make. And it sounds like things are really moving in the right direction with Chelsea Football.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And they're not doing as much new or novel as perhaps the media and some football fans think. And naturally, when Todd Bowley speaks for effectively the first time, and that was at a conference in New York, everyone picked up on the All-Star game, or the fact that he wrongly said Mo Salah, for example, had come through the Chelsea academy. And all of that's fine for people from the outside in to attack Chelsea for, or to use as fuel to suggest that these Americans somehow don't understand Chelsea and football. But it's nonsense. And if you look at behind the scenes, the hard work that they are doing, they've moved in two directions. They've not got everyone in place yet, but they've moved in two broad directions. One is more data, and two is a desire to build structure, which eventually will manifest in a multi-club model. And when they get that, not only will they have an ability to provide better pathways and lure talent at all levels and ages, and from their point of view, hopefully they end up in the Chelsea first team. And if they fail, as I've said many times before, they're still sellable at profits, but they'll also be able to track data. And when we talk about data, there's always a lack of understanding as to what that entails, because it's not only data to scout a player or data to monitor a player's development. It's data to make a projection on how much a player might improve. It's data to look at any injury predictions or preventions. And each aspect that data is used for provides you either with a marginal gain that can be the difference between winning a Premier League or only finishing in the top four, or a major gain because you might unearth the talent using it. So the broad array through which data can be used is so important, and it has to be connected through an entire football club from youth level all the way up to first team. And that's what the best clubs do well. So then when you look at what Chelsea are doing, they are talking to Red Bull. Why? Because they want to put an emphasis on youth, but they're also looking at the Manchester City mold, which is why they've brought in Tom Glick as their president of business operations, which effectively is a CEO role. They've got Toby Craig coming in as their director of corporate affairs, also from the City Group as well. So what you can see is that Chelsea appreciate the history and the football side that they've inherited, but they want to revolutionize the brand and the model. And that means renovating the stadium. It means being more global, which will have commercial benefits. And it means partnering, whether formally or non-formally, with other football clubs to create better pathways. So then when you do spend on players, you've got a higher percentage chance of them succeeding because you can bring them through your system, not somebody else's system. And that is ultimately the Chelsea plan. And when it is set out in those terms, that's nothing new. It's exactly what the City Group are doing. It's exactly what the Red Bull Group are doing. But you've got their level of ambition and you've got their financial muscle. And naturally, Manchester City had that as well when their model was first built. And look at them now. They're absolutely flying as both a football club and a group. And Chelsea will be exactly the same thing. But I think you made a key point, Terry, that transfer windows don't happen when the window opens anyway. And that's not just Chelsea, that's every club. So to say like Chelsea are working on Nkunku now or Vardiel now, they're breaking the mold, that again is incorrect. Every single football club is working windows ahead. It's the only way you get a player. If you want Bellingham, then you have to start now, and arguably you had to start a year ago. And that is why Liverpool and Real Madrid are currently the front runners. And some clubs do that better than others. Manchester United and probably Chelsea historically not as good at planning in a structured way, multiple windows ahead. But part of that, again, is because if you don't have the data, and if you don't have that ability to track a player at 14, 16, 18, and if you're not consistent about it, and then if you don't combine the data with the gut instinct, with the scouting, with the personal relationships that you develop, then you never get the full picture. And I've said this many times that the reason why Liverpool in particular, but also the City group, are so good is because they put in that time and energy and investment to get the full picture, to judge a player on the marginal gains as well as the obvious stuff, and to ensure that it's all logged, it's all connected, and it's all comparative. And comparative is also really key, by the way, too, because sometimes you'll scout a player and use data just as a yardstick. You might go after a name to get a price or to get data. So when you want your other name and they're at a much higher price, you say, well, listen, there's two players we're looking at. They're both like for like. They're like for like on data. They're like for like on age. They're like for like on potential. And then you may say, well, actually, we're either going to go for the other one because the price is so much cheaper and we think they've basically got the same potential. Or you might do the opposite and you might leverage the one you don't really want. And you might go to the other club and say, listen, we can either get this guy for 15 million or we can bid for the player at your club for 50 million. And we know you want to sell them, and you know and we know that they're basically exactly the same. And then you get a reduction on the price. So again, data can actually be used in the negotiation process as well as kind of part of the poker game. And Chelsea are basically playing catch up behind the scenes with their foundational core. And the honest truth is that Manchester United need to do the same.
Yeah, no, listen, I couldn't agree with you more. And I've been speaking about this for such a long time now, not just with Chelsea, but in general, and looking at the way the best clubs operate, sometimes pound for pound, sometimes on the same level. And someone once said to me, you'll never be able to recreate what Fergie did at Man United. And I disagree, but you just do it in a different way. You create Man United worked so well under Fergie because the club was run in his image. But the problem was he was in control of it. So when he leaves, you lose that figurehead. So all you need to do is create that at a club level that transcends and continues beyond any one particular manager or head coach, however your club names them. And it was my one biggest bugbear with Roman. I used to look at what he did and thought the money you spend is great. You buy brilliant players, you bring in brilliant managers, but it was always a little bit too knee-jerk when things got bad. And there wasn't always continuity from manager to manager to manager. And then I saw the way City, as an example, developed, and they just operated differently to Chelsea while spending big. And I think there was always this kind of, and I do blame some of the big mainstream media outlets for not educating fans on this, but there was just a view that City are doing what Chelsea did and they're just spending money. Well, and actually, when you looked beneath the surface and how they were building the club, there were such key fundamental differences. And you've seen the way Brighton operate as a great example. They're, for me, pound for pound, the best run club in the league, or one of them, with the way they operate. From, their girls under nines team will play the same style of football as the men's team. They only loan players out to clubs that play a similar style of football. So there's this cohesion and everything else. And I look at Man United as an example, and I'm sure Chelsea have gone through this. I guarantee it, because I've seen the Chelsea's academy play. Their academy would play one style of football that was the complete opposite from how the current first team manager operated. So there was no easy transition for an 18, 19-year-old lad to go from being in the academy to suddenly playing in a very pragmatic style with three at the back when he'd been playing 4-3-3 in the academy for like 6 years. It used to blow my mind that people couldn't see that. So yeah, I think what the Bowley group are doing is sensational.